So let's go over the settings for the Samsung S95C 55-inch. We're going to start by opening up the settings button to give us access to the main hub that we have here. Excuse me. We've got multi-view, we've got TV speaker, we've got our picture modes, which you can cycle through, which I'll go over the picture modes more in depth in a second here. We've got the timer, options, our Bluetooth device, the picture setup. We've got the Wi-Fi, which is currently disconnected. I highly recommend for everybody who wants to keep day one performance, you keep your televisions offline. If you remember with the Samsung S95B, firmware made it worse. And just to avoid that, just keep it offline just in case. Now, in terms of what we have next, amplify mode, you can go from standard to amplify. Now, if I'm using the internal speakers, I love to use amplify, and that's one of the things I would change almost immediately. I would turn off intelligent mode if you've enabled it. Otherwise, it'll be off by default. And captioning, you've got audio stuff. Again, it's pretty much all the same stuff that we saw. We've got the picture clarity options, which is on auto. Color temperature, which pretty much on every TV is set to cool. I mean, honestly speaking, it's one of the more annoying things that I run into on every TV. Energy saving options, support, again, energy saving solutions. So you have quite a few options. Now, of course, you see retail mode there and all settings. The first thing I like to do though is come over here to the list and edit it. I go over to all settings and then I move it and drag it all the way to the front of the queue because that's going to be the most useful thing. From there, I mean, you can really pick what else matters to you. Unfortunately, you have to do this like every single time, so it can be a little tedious if I'm being honest, and it is more of the annoying aspect of this, like for example, sound. That's like a bread and butter thing I would put next to picture. And you can do this for every single one, so that's great there. Now let's go into the picture settings and see what that offers us. So we're gonna go up, and we're going to go to all settings, and okay, we have a couple different things. We're going to go over picture mode first. So we have the following picture modes. We have dynamic, we have standard, new this year is eco, so that wasn't a thing before. We've got movie. Now because I selected retail mode in the beginning, I have retail bright and retail dark. Again, you can just disable those and you don't have to deal with retail bright or retail dark, though I believe I've already disabled retail mode, so that'd be really interesting if, because you activate retail mode, it then gives you extra picture presets so that you don't have to do cal day and cal night. That'd be really cool. So I'm going to click on retail, and right now it's still in retail mode, so we're going to enter the pin and just turn that off and go to home usage, and there we go. So now we're in the home mode. Okay, and let's see, it probably will default back to where it was before because, again, it doesn't like that. And yeah, so now that's off. So we have standard, dynamic standard, eco, movie mode, and filmmaker mode. Now I'm going to go to movie mode because that's usually the most accurate one out of the box. We're going to go to expert settings where we have brightness, contrast, sharpness, color, tint, apply to all settings, and current source. We've got under picture clarity options, we've got custom, auto, and off. We've got, the blur reduction and jutter reduction options. For the clear motion technology, I can't tell if it's flickering. It kind of looks like it is pulsating and flickering, so the same thing that we had last year, which ain't great. As far as noise reduction, all you have is auto or off. There's no low. And so that kind of sucks. I believe the S95B gave us the option to go low, so I believe we lost a feature this year. Again, these aren't the things they're going to tell you when they're selling you the TV, so maybe that matters to you, maybe it doesn't. Same processor as last year, so that does make a difference. As far as contrast enhancer, you have low and high. You don't have medium anymore, if I'm to believe correctly, because I'm pretty sure last year you had medium, so now it's just low and high. I'll double check that, but, c'est la vie, I suppose. As far as color temperatures, you have 4 cool, standard, warm 1, and warm 2. Those are the 4 that you get. White balance options are exactly the same as they've always been on Samsung TVs, and the same for the 20-point calibrations. And we go gamma, we have 2.2 or BT1886. ST2084 is your HDR format, same for HLG. So if these are on by default and you can't access BT1886 or 2.2 and these two are grayed out, it's because you're in HDR. I do not use HDR content. It is wildly inconsistent. I know a lot of people still try to say that there's a way of getting the director's intent. There's not, because there's no industry standard of approaching HDR. So I always do these reviews centric around SDR, which is universally where all of our content lives. And I mean all of it. Where HDR is a little bit more niche. I mean, I ask myself kind of like how much of the daily content we consume is in HDR. And so when you're watching my comparisons versus other people, be mindful, most of the comparison that I'm showing you is going to be in SDR for that very reason. Now, as far as what we still have our same sliders that we have, our shadow detail. Color space, we have the same as we had on the S95B with auto, normal, native, and custom. I would recommend changing it to native unless normal might be a little bit less obtrusive for you, but we have to see their color throw this year. I don't know how that works. We would have to test the smart calibration feature to see if that does anything. It usually doesn't. It usually breaks the television. And peak brightness is set to medium out of the gate. We can set it to high, but I'll leave it to medium. And then you can reset your picture. Now, under the sound options, you have your TV speaker, which again, you can choose from your receiver optical or your speaker list. And then you have your sound modes. I like using amplify. You can go into expert settings and then you can set eARC mode. You can go in and again, Dolby Atmos. You have a bunch of different options, which is so weird, by the way. I'm just going to say, I think it's very weird that they have Dolby Atmos, but not Dolby Vision. But I'll be fair in saying that it probably isn't as big of a deal as some people try to make, because again, how much of the stuff that you watch is in Dolby Vision? Probably not everything, so you can do without. It's just annoying because they need to get on with the times. Now, as far as the sound feedback, if you hate the annoying little boopity-boppity clicking nonsense, just go ahead and turn that off and sound feedback. And then from there, it's the connection to the internet, which is, external device manager. Your connection holds, again, network and Bluetooth devices, and external device manager is where you find juicy stuff, okay? Input signal plus, you usually want to go through and check all of these because that's what's going to give you your delicious UHD color, your HDMI color corrections that every 4K TV gives you. And black level is going to be grayed out unless you have an HDMI device hooked up. I don't right now. Input device manager, things like that. Device connect managers, things like that. So broadcast, this is obviously all over the air settings that you have here. Your general and privacy stuff, which is where you can find the accessibility, which you can go into and do the high contrast, and that will give you the black menu that you see here. If black works better than blue for you, you can toggle that on or off. So at least you have some options. And of course, all the normal stuff that you saw here, you learn your TV, remote menu, it's all built in, fortunately, so you don't have to keep a manual or anything. Voice assistant type stuff, system manager, which will let you do time, language, change your PIN, and change your usage mode if you want to watch that trippy store demo again. Your parental controls, which would consist of the parental lock, the parental rating settings, basically the lock settings for the rating, and then, of course, a bunch of various different things like app lock settings and things like that. Your energy saving mode, this is going to be important for some people, but as you see here, out of the gate, they actually don't have anything checked on energy saving, which is rare because normally they do. I noticed this on the Samsung S95C, or rather the QN90C this year, and now I'm seeing it again on the S95C. So they, I guess, heard feedback that we always turn these things off and kept them off. Now, only if they'd get that message about the super cool color temperature, that'd be great. Now, under panel care is where you're going to find your pixel shift. Never turn that off. Your logo brightness, basically, it adjusts the brightness up to high. There's no medium. I don't recommend you turn that off. And then your pixel refresh, which I don't recommend you do unless you notice that you have some image retention that isn't going away, which is likely not to happen on this display. You have, and again, I say not likely to happen because I have the Samsung S95B, and if it's anything like that, it's pretty resilient, and you're not going to see the stuff you'd see on a Sony OLED, where usually there's a little bit more of tiles kind of baking in, a little bit longer on image retention, things like that. That's what I've noticed, even with my Sony A8G Bravia OLED. So that's not like a dig at Sony. That's just literally what I've noticed as an owner. And we're going to go to the next option here, which is the start screen options, and this is where I like to disable some of this stuff. So the start with the smart hub, I always turn that off because I want to choose what I do. You can auto run the last app, but that's annoying. Auto run the multi-view mirroring, I turn that off. And the auto run multi-view mirroring casting, I just turn it all off. And then, of course, you have your reset, which is basically the factory reset. And then your support options, which right now I'm on current firmware 11.13. So For this review process, I am on firmware 11.13, and I'm sure people are going to forget it and be like, what firmware are you on? But that's what firmware I'm on. And I'm also on the 55-inch variation of this display. Then you have your stuff like the device care, connection guides, things like that. Now, connection guides are very useful. If you find yourself in a situation where maybe HDMIs are not really working properly and things like that, this is where you go to kind of troubleshoot a lot of that stuff. And you can do, what I like to do is the HDMI troubleshooting, the diagnostics and stuff like that. That'll help. They'll tell you if you need to replace your HDMI and things like that. It's actually really good. Of course, there are other HDMI troubleshootings here. There's other stuff for smartphones, PCs, game consoles. There's a ton of different things. The menu is slightly different than what we had on the S95 Beast, but don't be thrown off because you have all the main components of what made it work. Again, you have your remote control guide, you have your open e-manual, and then, of course, about this TV where you have your serial number, your model number, and all that good stuff. And that pretty much is everything that you can expect out of this television as far as settings. So I want to thank you guys for watching. The #1 brand in honesty. Till the next video, I'll see you guys later.